thank you very much, everyone. So each of our panelists has chosen a piece of work from spatial or experiential design. They were judges, as you know. And we will look at each piece of work one at a time, then we'll chat about them in more general terms afterwards. We'll start with Hannah's work, Hannah Carter-Owens. I'll just tell you a bit about Hannah. She was a spatial design judge. She's an interior designer, founded Carter-Owens Studio in 2020. Before that, Hannah was with Universal Design Studio for 11 years. So, Hannah, let's start with your piece of work, QVT.
That word.
Tenemos que estar dependientes de una persona que ve. Si no, estamos buscando, pues, quién nos ayude, ¿no? Para saber qué es farmacia, tienda, banco, qué es, ¿no?
In collaboration with Peru's biggest organizations for the visually impaired, Sol, the leading Peruvian cement brand, designed new tactile signage to enhance the current system, giving complete navigational independence in one of the most important districts in Peru.
Tenía que ser simple. Por eso usamos el mismo patrón lineal del sistema universal.
A horizontal bar indicates a tile where vertical lines can be counted to decode specific venues.
Aquí dice restaurante.
Banco. Bodega.
We created a program to teach them how to use it and spread the information with braille brochures and audio descriptions.
Alcalde de Miraflores inaugura sistema inclusivo para invidentes.
Es el primer distrito que ha implementado el sistema de evaluación.
Es una idea que complementa al actual sistema.
Sidewalks.
So that was Sight Walks, and it was by Circus Grey Peru in, and that project happened in Lima. So Hannah, what impressed you about that?
We were impressed with this entry, which we shortlisted in public spaces, just because of the sheer simplicity. Soul Cement, I think the brief was to create a project that highlighted how soul cement is beneficial to people's lives. And what was nice about this was that it was tackling a real-world problem. It was super simple. It was large-scale. In the end, I believe it ended up being open source. So the solution has, will have a life far beyond any aspiration of the cement brand. And so it just felt truly meaningful, and it was so simple. And while it's sort of, there was a lot of debate about it as a spatial design project, because it was connected to how people who have visual impairment experience space, we felt it was clearly relevant.
And did it talk at all about effectiveness? Like, is it working? Is it being rolled
yes.
out?
Yes, so we had lots of questions about that. It is being rolled out, and because it's open source, it can now be rolled out globally. But actually, this particular model is going into 3 US cities. So it is actually, it's changing how people use cities.
Okay, and it's kind of wayfinding, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
But 3D wayfinding in a way.
Yes, and I think as somebody who doesn't have visual impairment, I have a certain perception of what spatial design or spatial experience is, and of course that is nothing like somebody who is visually impaired. So I think we had to sort of let go of our assumptions and think about what spatial design or spatial experience is for everybody.
Mm. Okay, great. So we may well come back to that, but let's now move on to Naomi Leisure, who's sitting next to Hannah. She's over from the US. Naomi's got a background in theatre and television, but she's MD at the boutique experiential design agency Pinch. And should we talk about peakmag.com as well? Do you want to mention that? Shall I mention it?
Sure.
Okay, so you also run peak-mag.com, which is a love, sex and relationships personal blog with more than 60,000 readers. And Naomi, you've chosen Visa Loophole, the Visa Loophole. Could we run the VT, please? So that work was carried out by Ogilvy Singapore for Unilever. So Nomi, this is in the experiential category. What impressed you by this work?
I love this piece so much. We talked a lot about envy-invoking work, and this was a project that I was like, oh my God, I would have loved to work on this. A big topic of discussion in our room, which is a debate that I figured would be our most challenging point to kind of untangle, is what constitutes experience. And I fell sort of on the more hardliner position on this, is that experience has to be something that you can see, taste, touch, feel. It's something that you are physically kind of present for. And it feels like we're in a moment in time when digital is just like coming for us. It's like coming for experiential. And we had to really spend a lot of time discerning, does this project, which is, quite heavy in digital, does it constitute, et cetera, et cetera. But experiential for me represents the forefront of what brands can do. Experiential has always represented boundary-pushing brand work, reimagining how brands can show up in the lives of their consumers. And this is a project that has such nuanced, niche, and appropriate cultural fit across 2 continents, meeting a real need in a way that is perfectly authentic for this brand, and it represents what I hope to be the future of experiential, which is where we're applying experiential thinking to solving everyday problems. I think we will start to see experiential hopefully take some notes from work like this, and not just what are we building, or what sort of Instagram-worthy thing are we creating, but how are we actually changing the way people experience moments in their lives.
So you're talking about experience as being something that you're actually in the room.
I believe so, yeah. I mean, and I think we might get into that a bit, as we go through. But yes, it's open for interpretation and open for debate, and it's where we spent a lot of struggle in our conversation was it got quite philosophical. What does it mean to experience something? But I think for myself and at Pinch, the work we do, it's very rooted in tactile experience, and I feel like that's worth fighting for, and time when so many things are going online or digital or behind a screen.
So one thing about this project, obviously it must have been good for sheer moisturizer, Unilever's product. So I can see the sort of brand benefit there. But what about the long-term benefit or not for those women in Japan? I mean, or those artists went home.
Right.
What about next time they need to have their hair done?
So that's one of the limitations of this project. It was sort of scale and scope, and we spent time discussing that as well. Overall impact. It is limited kind of to this one art showcase. Hopefully, right, it started a conversation. To me, hopefully it can inspire other brands to take risks like this and think about how they can position their brand on the side of sort of advocacy for the communities that use their product or that their products can reach. But yeah, it's definitely limited on the more limited side in terms of scale.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're going to move on to Thomas Hunt, who's come over from Germany. Thomas is the CEO and founder of Jangled Nerves, and he designs museums, exhibitions, showrooms, trade fairs, events. He's also professor of media and space at HFT Stuttgart, and he has a yellow pencil from 2012 for an exhibition design. Thomas has chosen the Nike Victory Pompidou Center takeover from the Paris Olympics. So could we run that video, please?
As part of its DNA, it is Nike's duty to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete across the globe. So, in 2024, we used the world's largest sporting event to redefine how athletes are celebrated, elevating sport and victory to an art form. This is Nike au Centre Pompidou, an experience in the heart of Paris, host of the 2024 Olympic Games. We redesigned the city to make our mark, inspiring millions of athletes. The centerpiece was the takeover of the iconic Centre Pompidou, a symbol of disruption which inspired the legendary Nike Air Max 1. Outside, we transformed the iconic facade into a monumental digital outdoor screen, a technological beacon, visible throughout the city and even from the sky. The stunning visuals of international athletes captivated millions across Parisian streets. Beneath the awe-inspiring facade, we commissioned a public custom-designed skatable art installation, built for France's Olympiade Culturelle, blending art and sport. Inside, the Art of Victory exhibition celebrated the unending journey of Nike Air, sport's most revolutionary innovation, worn by Olympic athletes. The experience introduced AIR, Athlete Imagined Revolution, a groundbreaking co-creation initiative pairing elite athletes with Nike's designers and AI technology to shape the future of sport. Throughout the Games, we designed experiences that brought this unique space to life. From live talks with global icons, to installations that revolutionized running and design, and celebrations of sports, we took Nike's innovations beyond the venue and transformed urban and cultural spaces with the brand's iconic style. In total, we reached 160 million people online with the facade only, drove more than 1 million visitors, welcomed a staggering 18,000 exhibition visitors, while also generating an additional 2 million visits per day to the Nike website. Our design lit up the city, captivated the world's attention, and left an enduring legacy of innovation.
Okay, another good one. Thomas.
Yeah.
We're in spatial design now, aren't we? So what made you pick this one to talk about today?
Yeah. So, in spatial design within D&AD, we see a lot of great campaigns that also show up in space somewhere. Yeah? But it's always there's the campaign is the core idea, and then it comes to space. In this case, the whole thing starts with the idea to take over this icon of Centre Pompidou in Paris. Yeah, that is a cultural institution, and the whole situation in the city with this huge piazza, with the slope towards the building, the iconic facade with this escalators along, and the art dedicated museum that is within this building. This is really brought together to a holistic idea in this case, and it's also not only about the place, but it's also about the time, because it was a takeover while the Olympics took place in Paris. So there we had the impression that it's really something that stands for the idea to use spatial design as a core momentum to add all the other things like the pop-ups in the city, the campaigning, the activation for website and so on.
And what about the way it was measured, how it measured its success?
I think that the success is in a lot of different areas in this moment, because in this case it is something that is an experience for the visitors on site. You have the building that is activated. You can go into an exhibition if you want to go deeper into the topics of Nike. It's not only about selling the product. It's also like position a lot of things like art pieces, discussing about future topics within this AI-driven exhibition. And it is something that helps to create likes and shares and further discussions within all the other channels, like you see with the social media activations, with the views on website and so on.
Okay, interesting. We'll come back to that after we've heard from Maria Lashari, who's come over from Sweden. Maria is the founder and creative director of 1,000 Worlds Studio, which she describes as an ideas factory. And before that, she was at AKQA and Be Real. Now, Maria's chosen the Electricity Cauldron from EDF, which was by BETC Paris for EDF. This is also a Paris Olympics project. Could we see this video, please?
In Paris isn't actually for the games themselves, it's for the Olympic cauldron.
We had to come here to see this for ourselves and to show it to you up close. There is the Olympic.
É uma olímpica bem diferente, que fica sustentada por balão que não tem fogo.
The flame is not actually fire.
Cette icône olympique, on va la twister. Sans gaz, sans combustible, sans chaleur, on est arrivé à une flamme infiniment plus émouvante, plus émotionnelle que la vraie flamme.
Et puis nous, on voulait quand même que ça porte un message derrière. C'était important pour nous de dire, si on fait de l'électrique, c'est aussi parce qu'on est capable de chasser des usages fossiles partout. Et si on le fait avec le symbole ultime qui est celui de la flamme des Jeux, on le fait à tout, quoi. La révolution électrique, elle est en marche.
L'engouement des Parisiens et plus largement du monde entier autour de la vasque, c'était lunaire. Personne n'aurait pu le prédire, nous les premiers. On a été au rendez-vous du moment avec un enthousiasme autour de l'objet, des partages autour de l'objet qui, pour notre marque, ont un impact considérable. Le bilan pour la marque est formidable. EDF est le premier partenaire français des Jeux Olympiques dans l'esprit des Jeux.
EDF a vraiment montré toute sa capacité d'innovation et je me suis dit que cet objet marquerait les esprits à venir.
So, Maria, same question. What brought this one to your top of mind?
This case is actually a love-hate relationship of mine, and it was a lot of happy smiles in the room when we saw it, but it was also very, easy to like it. But we started talking about the reason we are here, and when advertising feels very same and copied, and it felt so fresh to rethink advertising in its entirety. Do we really need to do the same thing 1,000 times? What if we can actually change traditions, do it in different ways? And I know that when you're sitting in client rooms pushing for to do things differently, we are sort of met with pushback. You usually see sports brands sponsoring the Olympics, and actually pushing through this work is not only boundary breaking in itself, it actually sets the brief for next year. This energy company decided to own one thing and one thing only, and that was the fire. What other things can we as creatives own and tell stories around? Phenomenons. It sort of opened up our imagination. And it also talked about sustainability. How do we create new types of entertainment when Olympic Games are so expensive? One of the biggest briefs around this Olympic was how do we turn down and make it cheaper and more sustainable? Everyone can remember the cardboard beds for the athletes. Of course, there are a lot of things to do, but this is a beginning, and I just love the idea of owning a phenomenon instead of owning a big billboard or a building.
Okay, thank you. So that was obviously an experiential. So now we're in this murky world of experiential, which is perhaps nudging out spatial. Is that fair? Is that how anybody feels on the panel? An experiential is really growing at the moment?
I think the two are so dependent on each other. You know, I consider spatial like our comrades in arms, almost like, not to make this all about like digital's great, it has its place. But yeah, I don't see the two as being in opposition as much as really complementing each other. You know, for something to be an experience, it exists in space, you know, and here comes spatial to sort of provide the boundaries of what that is.
Yeah, and for spatial design, I think there's a big development that really came up after the pandemic, because with the pandemic, a lot of things have been moved into virtual experiences, and now we are happy that in a lot of fields, like space strikes back and comes back, and that a lot of brands found out and learned that only keeping things in digital doesn't work, and because we are human beings, we want to experience with all our senses, and the more the brands or the products are emotional, the more you need this tactile and multi-sensory experiences. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah? And I think there's always an overlap between experimental and spatial, but I think there's also a good understanding where it really is more about space and where it's more about this experiencing. And we discussed a lot in our jury about the subcategories and how we will perhaps also change and develop further this part of within the D&AD.
And in a way that there's always a digital element if something is going to be photographed and screened by the users, yeah, which happened in all three of your cases, not with site walks.
No. I mean, most of the entries, you know, social media impressions were a big kind of part of the qualification and success marker.
Okay, so that's useful for people entering another year to know.
Yes, but that's not what we were judging spatial on. But we did, as Thomas said, had a lot of discussion and debate about, I guess, context and purpose and what spatial means within the D&AD context, and what spatial means outside of it, and actually whether we need to relook at some of the categorizations. So there was quite a lot of kind of current debate within spatial.
Because there's a sense, isn't there, that the three, not Hannah's, but the other three are brand-raising projects, very successful. Yeah. Would you agree? Or Nomi's going to disagree with me there?
No, I agree. But we did, in judging, we stripped so much out. And I think to get at the core of experiential, again, because it feels so nebulous, we spent a lot of time stripping everything out that is not the experience. And so we stripped out a fair bit of but it has this reach on social, or it had this sort of digital extension, and really tried to focus on who was the human individual person who was present and the experience that they had, you know, and we would build on it in terms of it made certain cases more compelling if it did in fact then have impact, which could be measured in reach, et cetera, But, you know, the big flashy numbers of, you know, 8 billion impressions or whatever, we sort of took that out of the equation a little bit in order to be hyper-focused.
Is that something that Maria or Thomas, you went through as well, that sort of stripping away some of the figures to try and focus on the real user benefits?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we just came back to in the room was the active participation part. How does this serve the people, and how is the people reacting to this piece? So I guess that's the thing that sort of is different compared to the spatial, where you don't really have any virtual entries yet, I think.
And this was for us the point. If we get this huge numbers of views, and then we found out it was only about the campaign, and the spatial part was only a kind of nice add-on to the campaign. Then we didn't really see a big chance in it. So we were looking for things that have a huge impact in space. Either it's a campaign and then you're surprised, or you really get a benefit out of bringing this campaign also to space, or it's the other way around, like the Nike project stands for this, that something really starts with a spatial idea and then creates the momentum from there out.
I mean, in a way, you've got one here which is functional design, the kind of the 3D wayfinding, and then the others are more kind of brand campaign benefits. Was that a tussle within your groups that maybe more within your spatial, aren't you, Hannah?
Yes.
That because you must have had a number of projects that you're not really comparing like with like some of the time.
Yeah.
How do you manage that within the jury?
I think it was just striving for excellence, and actually there were lots and lots of entries that were maybe you could say were more purpose driven, and they were either trying to bring attention to the work of charities, or they were trying to solve real world issues. There were kind of a surprising number of entries that were tackling proper problems and trying to offer proper solutions that far outweighed the kind of remit of the brand. But at the end of the day, we're there to judge on the D&AD criteria, and then it didn't really matter so much whether it was a brand that was authoring it or a charity that was authoring it. It was just about excellent work.
Yeah, and I think that's where the visa loophole comes in, isn't it? Because it was so strong in terms of literally spotting a gap in the market, really, or spotting a loophole that had never been considered before.
And just applying really creative thinking, you know, to a problem in a way that, again, is really fits the brand. We also similarly had a lot of really moving emotional work that, you know, we had to give each other permission to, like, be critical. It's okay to be critical of this thing that, you know, because it represents a cause maybe you really care about. And just ask ourselves, you know, have we seen this before? Is this setting a new standard? Is this, in fact, a good fit for the brand, or is the brand sort of getting lost, you know, in all of the messaging?
Okay. And in terms of what we learn from an educational point of view, if people are thinking of entering another year, what have you, in 1 minute, quick, what have you learned from your judging experience that would be helpful for anybody in the audience? Not everybody has to answer that. Does anything spring to anyone's mind?
I think what we wanted to see across all of the entries was more material. So actually that was one of the hardest things, judging entry against entry, was just the amount of information that was handed over, and we could have benefited. So if we were setting kind of criteria for entries, we would stipulate that there had to be more about the before and after, and just flesh out entrance with more information.
Okay, that's very helpful. Maria, do you want to just add to that?
Yeah, I would say that walk in with an open mind. You never know when you're going to change it, and you're going to change it multiple times, because we have a lot of great arguments in the room that's going to take you to one side and another in a second.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you all four of our juries for being on the panel and for all your insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.